You already know it feels good. That late night scroll, that extra slice of something sweet, that click that turns into an hour. It's harmless, right? Just a small comfort after a long day. But here's the question no one's asking. What is it costing you? Because while you're busy reaching for what feels good in the moment, something else is quietly slipping away. Your energy, your discipline, your clarity, your ambition, your connection with the people around you. And it never happens all at once. That's what makes it so dangerous. You don't wake up and realize you've lost yourself. You just slowly stop showing up for the things that matter. You get foggier, slower, less driven, less present, but you keep chasing that next little burst of pleasure because for a few seconds it helps you forget. But forget what? That you've traded long-term peace for short-term hits. That your potential is being eroded by habits that feel good now but steal from your future without ever warning you. In this video, we're going to break down 6 hidden costs that come with the things you think are helping you cope. These aren't warnings meant to scare you, they're patterns most people never see until it's too late. So before you reach for that next scroll, bite, binge, or buzz, watch this. Because once you understand what it's actually costing you, you might make a very different choice the next time it shows up. Let's get into it. It starts with something that seems harmless. A quick scroll during your break. A few minutes of a show before bed. Checking just one more notification. One more headline. One more comment. It feels normal. It feels like nothing. But what you don't realize is that every time you give in to that tiny impulse for stimulation, your brain is quietly paying a price. And over time, that price starts showing up in ways you can't ignore. You used to be sharp. You could focus for hours, finish projects without breaking a sweat, solve problems quickly. Now, you start a task and 2 minutes later you're thinking about something else. You walk into a room and forget why. You reread the same paragraph 3 times. You open your phone for one thing, and suddenly 10 minutes have disappeared. And maybe you laugh it off, blame it on age, or stress, or being busy. But what if it's none of those things? What if it's the result of quiet, constant interruptions your brain was never built to handle? You see, your mind doesn't just get tired from working too hard. It gets tired from switching too much. Every time you bounce between tasks, between thoughts, between apps, between notifications, your brain has to recalibrate. It's like revving the engine of a car every 30 seconds. Eventually, something burns out. And in your case, what starts to burn out is your ability to concentrate. That feeling of mental fog, of needing more coffee just to push through the day. That's not just burnout, it's cognitive fatigue. And it doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from doing too little with too many interruptions. We live in a world designed to keep us stimulated. Algorithms aren't built to help you grow. They're built to keep you watching, clicking, scrolling. And the more your brain gets used to short, fast, attention-grabbing content, the harder it becomes to sit with anything deep. Anything quiet, anything meaningful. Think about the last time you read a book without checking your phone. The last time you had a thought and followed it all the way through. The last time you worked on something for an hour straight. Fully immersed. For most people, it's hard to remember. And the scary part is, it's not just habit, it's wiring. When you constantly jump between quick hits of information, you're training your brain to expect them. And just like a muscle, what you train grows. And what you don't use weakens. That deep focus you once had, it starts to shrink. That ability to think clearly under pressure, it fades. Your brain starts to crave instant rewards so much. It forgets how to tolerate the boredom that often leads to breakthroughs. And no one talks about this. Because it doesn't feel dramatic. It's not like a crash or a breakdown. It's just a slow erosion of attention, clarity, motivation. One that feels like it's your fault. But it's not. It's your brain reacting to an environment that's too loud, too fast, and too full of distractions disguised as harmless fun. And here's where it gets even deeper. Once you lose your ability to focus, everything else starts to fall apart. Your work quality drops. Your conversations become more surface level. You stop following through on your goals. You become reactive instead of intentional. And that version of yourself you used to respect, the one who followed through, who finished what he started, who showed up fully, that version starts to feel like a memory. You might still go through the motions. You still answer emails, show up for meetings, pay your bills, but internally you feel like something's missing, like your edge is gone, and no matter how much you try to push through, you can't seem to get it back. Because you can't fix focus by trying harder. You fix focus by rebuilding space, stillness, silence, the things your brain needs to reset, but rarely gets anymore. And the trap most people fall into? They think they're just tired, that they need a weekend off. But what they really need is a detox, not from work but from constant stimulation, a chance for their brain to slow down long enough to breathe, to remember how to go deep instead of wide, to remember what it's like to pay attention to one thing at a time without needing to check in every 5 minutes. And that's not something you can outsource. It's not something you can fix with an app or a productivity hack. It's a shift in how you treat your attention, like it's something valuable, not disposable. Because here's the truth most people don't want to admit. Your mind was never meant to be a battleground for 1,000 inputs a day. And every time you reach for your phone, or click on something you didn't intend to see, or open 5 tabs when one would do, you're not just wasting time, you're training your brain to be scattered, shallow, distracted, and over the course of months or years, that training starts to become who you are. But there's a choice in that. You can keep feeding the cycle, keep chasing short hits of stimulation while your focus slowly fades. Or you can take the harder path, the one where you reclaim your attention, protect your clarity, and rebuild the mental discipline that used to be your edge. Because once you lose that clarity, you don't just lose focus. You lose the foundation for everything else. Your decisions, your goals, your confidence, even your peace. And that's just the beginning. Because what this kind of attention drain does to your emotional health, how it rewires the way you feel, respond, and connect with others, that's something most people never see coming until it's already taken hold. You don't always notice it at first. You just feel a little off, more impatient than usual, more irritable over small things. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and suddenly your whole mood changes. A friend doesn't respond quickly, and you feel strangely rejected. You scroll for comfort, you snack for relief, you stay up later than you should, telling yourself you're unwinding, when really you're avoiding something. That something is emotional discomfort. And most people spend their entire day avoiding it, without realizing that every act of avoidance is costing them their emotional strength. Because here's the truth, what feels good in the moment often numbs what needs to be faced. It gives you a temporary escape, yes, but over time, it robs you of something much deeper, your capacity to handle things, to sit with hard emotions, to face what's uncomfortable and work through it instead of masking it. Every time you reach for the easy hit, whether it's a scroll, a snack, a sip, or a dopamine spike, you're sending your brain a message. I can't handle this right now, I need out. And your brain listens. It starts to believe that discomfort is dangerous, that sadness should be silenced, that boredom must be filled, that frustration needs a fix, not a process. So instead of learning how to ride the emotional waves of life, you start building a habit of fleeing them. Not outwardly, but inwardly, checking out, distracting, disengaging. And the longer you do that, the more your emotional muscles weaken. What used to feel like a small problem now feels like a big one. What used to take 5 minutes to talk through now leads to hours of silent resentment. You become more reactive, less reflective. You lash out, then regret it. Or worse, you withdraw, go quiet, and start living behind a mask of I'm fine. But you're not fine, you're emotionally exhausted. Not because life is harder than before, but because your ability to deal with life's hard parts has slowly been stripped away. You see, emotional strength isn't about pretending nothing bothers you. It's about facing what does, with honesty, presence, and patience. But none of those qualities thrive in an overstimulated mind. And they always come. That's the hidden cost of always chasing what feels good. You start to feel empty, even in the middle of pleasure. You laugh, but it's shallow. You're surrounded by noise, but you feel alone. You're doing the things you used to enjoy. Watching shows, eating your favorite foods, scrolling through funny clips, but something's missing. Something you can't quite name. That something is presence. Real emotional connection. With yourself. With others. With the moment. But you can't access it when your default setting is escape. This is how people drift into emotional detachment without even realizing it. They slowly lose interest in their relationships. Their partner talks, but they're not really listening. A friend reaches out, but they're too drained to respond. Moments that should feel meaningful start to feel muted, not because they don't care, but because their emotional bandwidth has been stretched too thin by daily micro-escapes. And that creates a dangerous feedback loop. You feel emotionally distant, so you seek something to make you feel better. A scroll, a snack, a drink, a distraction. But instead of filling you up, it empties you further. And now the thing that used to comfort you is making you feel worse. But you keep going back to it. Why? Because it's easy, and it's fast, and it works for about 10 minutes. But emotional health isn't built in 10-minute bursts. It's built in the moments you stay, when you feel overwhelmed and don't run, when you feel sad and don't reach for your phone, when you feel lonely and don't numb it with background noise. But instead, call someone, or sit with it, or go for a walk and let it move through you. Most people don't do this, because it's hard. It takes awareness, it takes effort, and it takes time. But that's exactly why it works. Every time you face, instead of flee, your emotional core strengthens. You become less reactive, more stable, more grounded. You stop riding the highs and lows of temporary relief and start living in a deeper, steadier place, one where you're not afraid of your feelings, where you're not constantly trying to escape them, where you're finally fully here. And here's the beautiful part: the more emotionally stable you become, the less tempting those instant feel-good habits become. Because you're no longer starving for relief. You're full with presence, with connection, with real peace. Not the kind that comes from checking out, but the kind that comes from checking in. Ask yourself this: when was the last time you sat with your feelings long enough to understand them, without trying to fix, numb, or explain them away? When was the last time you felt something deeply and allowed it to pass through you without distraction? If it's been a while, you're not alone, but you're also not stuck. You can start today. Small moments, a little discomfort, no escape. Because every time you stay, you rebuild. And what you're rebuilding isn't just emotional health. It's your sense of self. The version of you that doesn't hide behind habits, that doesn't need constant stimulation to feel okay, that doesn't fear boredom, silence, or stillness. The version of you that's steady, present, and fully alive. And when that version starts to wake up again, everything changes. But before you can reconnect with that version, you'll have to face something even deeper. How these feel-good moments, done too often, start reshaping your identity itself. And that's what we'll unpack next. Most people think identity is something fixed, something you're born with, or maybe something you discover after enough soul-searching. But the truth is, identity isn't found, it's built. And it's built one small decision at a time. Especially the decisions you make when no one's watching. So what happens when those quiet decisions, what you watch, what you avoid, what you reach for when you're stressed, start revolving around short-term comfort? It doesn't just affect how you feel, it changes who you become. This is the silent danger most people never see coming. They think they're just relaxing, just unwinding, just being human. But over time, the little choices that feel good in the moment start becoming habits, and habits become patterns. And patterns, if left unchecked, become identity. You might have started out as someone focused, ambitious, full of ideas and energy. You had a direction, a spark, you chased goals, woke up early, held yourself accountable. But slowly, the late nights got later. The mornings got slower. That podcast you used to listen to turned into endless scrolling. That project you were excited about kept getting pushed to next week. And without meaning to, the person you were quietly started fading. Not overnight. Gradually, incrementally. That's what makes it so dangerous. You didn't decide to become distracted. You just kept choosing what felt easier in the moment. And now, months or even years later, you don't recognize the person in the mirror the same way. You feel duller, less motivated, like something got turned down inside you, and you're not sure how to turn it back up. That's identity erosion, and it's real. You stop seeing yourself as someone who follows through. You start identifying with procrastination, with being tired all the time, with being just someone who needs a break. But what you actually need isn't another break. It's a reset. A reconnection with the person you were before you got hooked on comfort. And here's the hard truth. The longer you live out of alignment with that version of yourself, the more foreign they start to feel. You stop believing you're capable of the things you used to do without thinking. Your confidence doesn't just dip, it shrinks, and now even small steps feel overwhelming. You tell yourself it's because you've changed, but deep down you know it's not change, it's drift. The good news is, drift is reversible, but it requires honesty. Ask yourself, when did you start identifying with your distractions more than your direction? When did comfort become the thing you organized your day around? It might have started small. A few extra episodes instead of working on your health. Scrolling instead of journaling. Another late night instead of waking up with intention. And each time, you told yourself it didn't matter, that you'd get back on track later. But later kept moving. And now you're here, living in a version of yourself that doesn't match your values but feels too tired to fight back. But that fight? That's where the real you lives. The version of you that doesn't just want to change, but remembers what it felt like to be fully alive, awake, directed, not perfect, but intentional. That version of you isn't gone. They're buried, under habits, under doubt, under a mountain of small escapes that piled up over time. The path back isn't dramatic. It doesn't require a 30-day detox, or deleting every app or starting a new routine at 5 a.m. It just requires one thing: proof. You need to give your brain evidence that you're still that person, not just with thoughts or affirmations, but with actions, especially small ones. Because every time you show up for a value, even just for 5 minutes, you send a signal to your identity. This is who I am. That's how you rebuild. You pick up a book instead of your phone. You take a walk instead of sinking into the couch. You write down one goal and take one step toward it, even if it's tiny. And you keep doing it, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. Because the goal isn't to feel good in the moment, it's to feel proud over time. And pride isn't something you get from scrolling, from indulging, from checking out. Pride comes from alignment, from looking at your choices and saying, that's me, that's who I want to be. It's subtle, but powerful. And once you get that feeling back just once, it becomes easier to chase again. Because now you're no longer running from discomfort, you're running towards something. Something solid, something real, something lasting. Most people never get here, because they don't realize what's been stolen from them. They don't see how much their identity has shifted. They just assume they've grown out of their discipline, that they've lost motivation, that this tired, distracted version of themselves is their new normal. But it's not. It's a reflection of what they've been practicing. And the same way you practice checking out, you can practice checking back in. So here's the challenge. Don't ask yourself what feels good right now. Ask yourself, who do I want to become? Then act like that person, even if only for a minute. Because identity isn't something you find. It's something you earn moment by moment, choice by choice. And the longer you stay aligned with that version of you, the stronger, clearer, and more confident you become. But if you want to protect that identity, you'll need to learn something even more important: how these feel-good behaviors impact your ability to build momentum. Because what looks like a small pause today can turn into a lifelong standstill. And that's what we'll dive into next. Momentum doesn't disappear all at once. It slips, quietly, almost invisibly. One missed workout, one delayed conversation, one "I'll do it tomorrow" that turns into next week, then next month, and before you know it, the engine that used to drive your progress has stalled and restarting it feels almost impossible. What makes momentum so powerful is also what makes losing it so dangerous. Because once you stop moving forward, your brain doesn't just pause, it rewires. It gets used to staying still, used to putting things off, used to choosing what feels easy over what builds growth. And that rewiring, it becomes your new normal. The truth is, momentum isn't about motivation. It's not about waiting for the perfect day or the right mindset. It's about motion, tiny, repeated motion. That first walk, that uncomfortable phone call, that early morning when you wanted to sleep in but didn't. It's those moments, those micro wins that build the fire you remember having. But when you keep choosing short-term comfort, the fire dims. Not because you're lazy, not because you lack discipline, but because you've trained yourself to avoid resistance. And resistance is exactly what momentum feeds on. Think back to a time when you felt unstoppable, when things were clicking. You had routines. You had energy. You weren't second-guessing everything. That wasn't magic. It was momentum. Every action gave birth to the next. You were in motion. And when you're in motion, you don't need to convince yourself to keep going. You just go. But here's the danger. The more you reach for what feels good now, just 5 more minutes, one more scroll, a little reward after a hard day, the more friction you create when trying to start again. You're not just losing time, you're losing trust in yourself. Because every time you say tomorrow, and tomorrow never comes, your brain remembers. It stops believing you. It stops investing energy into your goals. Why would it when you've shown over and over that your comfort comes first? And then something worse happens. You start redefining your potential based on your current behavior. You begin telling yourself, I guess I'm just not that motivated anymore. Or maybe I'm not the kind of person who finishes things. You label yourself based on a temporary phase, but momentum is a phase too. It just takes a different kind of fuel to restart, and the longer you wait, the heavier it gets. Here's the catch most people don't see. The longer you've been stuck, the more your comfort habits start to solidify. Your environment adapts to your inertia. Your friends stop checking in. Your schedule gets looser. You stop making plans. You stop being challenged. You stop expecting much from yourself. And you settle. Settling feels safer than failing. But here's what nobody tells you. Settling is a slow-motion failure. It doesn't sting at first. It actually feels kind of nice. Less pressure, fewer expectations, a little more freedom. But then the months pass, and you look up one day and you don't know where the time went or where your ambition went with it. That's what momentum loss does. It doesn't just stop your progress. It convinces you that progress isn't even worth chasing anymore. But here's the truth, and you need to hear this clearly. Momentum is waiting for you. It hasn't disappeared. It hasn't died. It's just buried beneath your habits, your guilt, your comfort. And all it needs to return is one simple thing. A win. A single, undeniable win that proves to your brain, we're back. That we're not just thinking about change, we're doing it. That we're not waiting for a perfect plan, we're moving, today in the direction of something better. And here's the thing, that win doesn't need to be massive. It can be drinking water instead of soda, stretching for 5 minutes, waking up when your alarm goes off the first time, saying no to the thing you usually give into. Because that small win becomes a vote for your future self, a vote that says, I'm not stuck, I'm in motion. And motion always compounds. The key is to protect it, ruthlessly. Not because you're weak, but because you're human. And humans are momentum machines. We get better by doing, we grow by acting. You can think about change all day long, but until you do something physically, tangibly, your brain won't register the shift. So stop waiting to feel ready. You're not supposed to feel ready. Readiness is a reward of action, not the prerequisite. And don't underestimate how good it will feel to finally follow through again. To have one day where you're proud of yourself. To go to bed thinking, that was progress. That feeling, it's fuel. And it builds. Because now you're not just breaking out of a rut, you're building a new identity. One that doesn't chase short-term hits. One that respects long-term peace. This is your reminder that momentum is yours to reclaim. You haven't lost your drive, you've just paused it. You haven't failed, you've drifted. And the path back isn't massive or heroic, it's small, uncomfortable, and absolutely within reach. Start where you are, move how you can, act like someone who is rebuilding momentum, because that's exactly what you are. And the moment you do, you'll notice something. You're not just doing more, you're becoming more. But to truly sustain it, there's one thing you have to face, the price of avoiding emotional discomfort. Because that's the reason so many people crash their momentum in the first place. And in the next section, we're going to talk about how avoiding pain, especially the kind you pretend doesn't bother you, is quietly costing you the peace you've been chasing all along. You might think emotional avoidance is harmless, that it's just a temporary break from stress. But avoid for long enough, and it becomes a lifestyle, a quiet prison. You tell yourself you're relaxing after a tough day. You deserve it. But what you don't realize is that every time you choose distraction over discomfort, your emotional resilience loses a bit more strength. And the freedom you feel in the moment, it comes at a much higher cost than you think. Here's what happens. When a tough conversation looms, you delay it. When a hard feeling surfaces, you ignore it. You scroll, you binge, you numb. And slowly, silently, you begin to trade true peace for temporary relief. It starts small. You felt hurt, so you watched a show to escape. Then you felt stressed, so you snacked just a little more. You felt bored, so you scrolled. It feels normal. It feels natural. But each time you do it, your mind gets the message. Discomfort is bad. Avoid it. Then something shifts. The world doesn't pause just because you're avoiding it. And when real pain inevitably shows up, loss, disappointment, conflict, you're not ready. You've spent so much time running away from discomfort, you've forgotten how to face it. You forget that embracing the difficult moments is how we heal, how we grow, how we learn. Instead, you default to escape. And escape brings immediate comfort, yes, but every escape erodes emotional strength. Every leap away from feeling leaves a tiny crack in your ability to heal next time. What starts as innocent avoidance becomes a habit of disconnection from yourself and others. Your relationship should be a safe space, but you've been emotionally absent. You listen, but you don't really hear. You walk through family events, but you stay quiet. You respond, but you don't engage. And gradually, the closeness you once felt has gone stale. Because closeness requires courage, the courage to feel uncomfortable things, to speak difficult truths, to be vulnerable when staying silent would be easier. But avoidance has convinced you silence is comfort. So you stay quiet even when your heart wants to shout, I need you, I'm hurting, I'm confused. You might think this is just normal adulting, but it's not. It's emotional atrophy, and it's dangerous. Your emotional world becomes a charade. You pretend to feel joy, you pretend to be okay, you laugh at jokes, you light up at holidays. But under the surface, you're disconnected, you're stressed, you're struggling in silence. And the people around you, they feel it, even if they can't name it. Children sense it, partners feel it, close friends notice it. They ask if everything's okay, but you say the same thing you've been saying for years. I'm fine. But what does fine even mean anymore? Because it certainly doesn't feel like you're okay. The problem isn't that avoidance lets you escape. It's that it convinces you evil feelings are evil, and the best way to handle them is to bury them. But burying doesn't fix, it only depths. Deep feelings need to be felt, expressed, processed. That's how pain loses power. Instead, you push it down, distract, numb, delay, until it becomes the background hum of your life. It's the ache behind your chest that you can't explain, the fatigue that never lifts, the sense of being wearing a mask. Each moment of avoidance takes a little piece of your true self, and before long, you're living inside a version of yourself you don't recognize. When you avoid uncomfortable emotions, you also avoid opportunities. Opportunities for growth, connection, healing. If a challenging moment arrives and you run, you miss the lesson inside it. You miss the closeness you could have built, the understanding that could have grown. Always avoiding means always missing. So what can you do? First, start to notice. Notice when you go for relief instead of presence. Notice when you feel uncomfortable and see what you reach for first. Is it your phone, a snack, a distraction, a drink? Second, choose once more to stay. To feel the feeling. To lean into the discomfort just long enough to breathe through it. You don't need to fix it, just feel it. Third, talk to someone. Tell them, I'm not okay today. Let that be enough. No explanation, no fix, just honesty. Because vulnerability is the opposite of avoidance, and where avoidance isolates, vulnerability connects. With each small act of presence, falling into discomfort instead of away from it, you begin to reclaim your emotional life. You build trust with yourself again. You tell your mind, I can handle hard feelings, and every time you choose presence over escape, emotional avoidance loses its power. And then something begins to shift. You feel more alive, more human, more truthful. You sleep better, you connect better, you laugh more deeply. Not because you're chasing pleasure, but because you reclaimed presence. You're waking up again. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Real discomfort rarely feels safe. But the discomfort of avoiding discomfort is dull. It runs on autopilot. It doesn't challenge you. It doesn't surprise you. It just numbs you. But choosing presence, that's connection, that's growth, that's life. This isn't self-help fluff. It's science. Avoidance is linked to anxiety, depression, loneliness. Emotional stagnation is a silent killer of the soul, and the longer you stay in escape mode, the bigger the mountain feels when you decide to face what's inside. But the longer you choose presence, the more powerful you become, the more resilience you build, the more freedom you reclaim. Here's the challenge. Catch your next moment of emotional discomfort. Take a breath. Ask yourself, what am I feeling? What do I need? Can I stay with this for a minute? Then stay, and let yourself feel something real. Because you aren't broken, you're human. You weren't built to live above your feelings, you were built to live through them. And every moment you choose presence, you stitch humanity back into your life, into your relationships, into your identity. Avoidance is quiet, its consequences are slow, but they're real. And if you're watching this, maybe it's time to finally feel what you've been avoiding. Because this isn't just about emotions, it's about artistic energy, real conversation, meaningful living. And if you reclaim presence, momentum stops stalling, identity stops drifting, relationships start connecting, and the peace you've been chasing finally arrives. Most people don't realize how dangerous isolation is until it's already taken root. You might think you're just enjoying quiet time, just decompressing, just skipping a call or postponing a meetup, but over time, those small choices stack up, and suddenly, what felt like personal space becomes emotional distance. What used to be connection turns into silence, and that silence starts to reshape you. It's easy to forget that our minds, our moods, even our bodies, were designed around connection. There's real science behind it. Loneliness has been linked to increased risk of heart disease, cognitive decline, and even early death. In fact, some researchers say that social isolation can be as harmful to your health as smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. Not because being alone is inherently bad, but because staying disconnected for too long creates a kind of emotional malnutrition. You stop receiving the little signals of support, attention, and validation that your nervous system depends on to regulate itself. You might not even notice it at first. Maybe you just feel a little foggier, a little more tired. You stop laughing as often. You find yourself reaching for distractions instead of people. But the truth is, emotional connection is not a luxury. It's a biological need. And when we replace real presence with screen time, or deep conversation with surface-level updates, we starve ourselves of the very thing that gives life its meaning. It's not about being popular. It's about being known, being seen, having someone who notices when your tone changes, who remembers your bad days and celebrates your good ones. Someone who doesn't just hear your words but listens for what you don't say. Those kinds of relationships don't just improve your mental health, they literally protect your body from stress, reduce inflammation, and increase your lifespan. But here's the part no one talks about. Connection takes effort. It's not convenient. It's not always comfortable. It means showing up when you'd rather stay quiet. It means checking in, even when you're tired. It means asking deeper questions, not just sharing memes. And in a world that constantly pushes us toward instant gratification, it's easy to trade meaningful bonds for cheap interactions. A like, a reaction, a quick scroll. The danger isn't that we stop caring, it's that we stop trying. So if you've noticed your world getting quieter, if your days feel more disconnected, if the people you used to speak with now feel distant, it's not too late. Send the message. Make the call. Ask someone to meet for coffee, even if it feels awkward. Because the cure for disconnection isn't more distraction, it's more presence. Not just being near people, but being with them, fully, openly, willingly. Because at the end of your life, it won't be the videos you watched, the things you bought, or the moments you spent alone that you remember. It'll be the people, the conversations, the shared laughter, and even the shared pain. That's what makes life worth living, and it starts with one small decision: to connect again. Today. Now that you've seen the truth behind what feels good in the moment but quietly costs you more than you realize, it's time to ask yourself the hard question: what are you really trading away? Because every time you reach for that quick fix, whether it's another scroll, another snack, another hour of zoning out, you're giving up something deeper. Something slower, yes, but something far more valuable. Your clarity, your relationships, your growth, your health, your time. And unlike dopamine, those things don't flood your brain with instant reward. They build quietly, day by day, choice by choice. But here's what most people miss. The real damage doesn't come from one bad habit, one missed moment, or one easy escape. It comes from the slow accumulation, the silent drift, the weeks where your body is running on autopilot, but your soul is asleep. The months where you feel like you're surviving, but not really living. The years that pass and leave you wondering, what exactly did I do with all that time? This isn't about shame. This is about awareness. Because the moment you notice the pattern, you have the power to change it. That's the gift of consciousness. It gives you a second chance. A chance to turn passive habits into intentional action. A chance to pull yourself out of numbing routines and into a life that actually feels like yours. And the beauty is, you don't have to change everything at once. Start small. One habit, one decision, one moment where you say, I'm not going to numb this. I'm going to face it. I'm going to stay present. Whether that's putting your phone down when someone's talking to you, taking a walk instead of opening another app, sitting with discomfort instead of running from it. These are the little wins that rebuild your momentum. And the more you practice them, the more your life begins to change. Not with a dramatic explosion, but with steady movement. You'll think more clearly. You'll sleep more deeply. You'll start craving peace instead of noise, fulfillment instead of stimulation. And with every right decision you make, even the ones that feel small, you'll start earning back the parts of yourself that the world tried to distract you from. Because you were never meant to live on autopilot. You weren't built to just chase pleasure and avoid pain. You were made for depth, for discipline, for presence, for real connection. And every time you say no to the temporary high that robs your future, you're saying yes to a stronger, clearer, more grounded version of yourself. So the next time something promises you comfort without effort, ease without purpose, escape without growth, pause, ask yourself what it's really costing you. Because that momentary yes might feel harmless, but your life is built out of those tiny yeses. Stack enough of them in the wrong direction, and you end up far from the life you were meant to live. But you can rewrite that path, starting now. Thank you for watching. If this message spoke to you, if you saw yourself in any part of it, leave a comment below and let us know what hit hardest. And if you're ready to reclaim your focus, your health, and your time, don't just watch, take action. Like, share, and subscribe so you never miss the next step. Because this journey doesn't end here. It starts today, with one decision to live with more awareness than yesterday. You've got this. We'll see you in the next one.